If you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. For more videos like this, what is the scariest paranormal story you have ever experienced? We got my grandma an alarm system after some criminal activity. Teenagers broke into her home and, before that, someone was living in her basement without her knowledge. This thing had a camera on the exterior doors and motion sensors to take pics of whoever came into the house. Awesome. We were convinced she would be fine. I got a call from her when her phone went off at work saying that motion was detected in the home. Weird, I thought. She lives alone. She assumed someone broke into her house. I'm concerned because the alarm system itself didn't go off, so this person must have been in the house when she set the alarm. Imagine her surprise when she sees her deceased brother-in-law rooting around in the fridge. He hit a low spot after his daughter died and wife left him. One morning, he took a gun out to a lake and killed himself. Apparently he used to come over to my grandma's house every weekend and help her ex-husband with the basement remodel. He used to always dig in the fridge for snacks. I have the pic on my phone still. It's a wild thing to see regardless of the answer, a ghost or an intruder who was hiding in the basement. I live in Vermont, pretty close to the Canadian border, and my family owns a good chunk of a mountain behind our house. I've always loved hiking up our mountain and camping out, but after several instances of being far too close for comfort with coyotes and bears at night, I decided to build a small shack for camping in. I built it in my freshman year of high school, and it certainly was nothing to write home about. It was basically a log cabin made from only moose maple, which sick for building with, and completely encased in roofing to prevent rain from blowing through the cracks between logs. That's the backstory. The camp became a pretty popular spot for my friends and I to hang out, shoot guns, and blow stuff up because it was 10 miles away from any significant settlement. While it was certainly liberating being in the middle of nowhere, we all knew it was on us to get to safety as any of us got injured up there. Anyways, I'll start with the story. I asked one of my close friends to go on a campout on a Friday night after school. We'd been friends since middle school, so he had been up there multiple times before. After hiking up and roasting some hot dogs on a fire while listening to some chill music, it was dark. Whenever it gets dark on these campouts, you can always hear wildlife, I thought, running around the woods surrounding the fire. I always thought it was creepy, but after a long time with no bad encounters with wildlife, I felt pretty okay with the situation every night I was up there, and it more or less just became a neat occurrence while camping out. I always was armed with some sort of gun going up there for protection, so I never felt that scared. Anyways, after having our fill, we decided to go into the camp and get some sleep. In the camp, 10x12, there was one homemade bunk bed, some floor space and countertop, and a small woodcock stove. I took top bunk, and my friend took the bottom. We both fell asleep pretty quickly, but awoke simultaneously at what I would guess was around 1 a.m. to the sound of a church choir right outside the camp. It sounded like 30 to 40 people singing, and it was resonating inside my head. I could distinctly make out some Latin words, but I could never piece together what was being said. I turned down to my friend and asked if his phone was on, and he said it was dead. The creepiest part about this after reflecting on it was that we were perfectly calm. If anything, it was super soothing, and eventually, we both fell asleep. In the morning, we both checked around the camp and saw no signs of anyone, let alone 40 people. We were 10 miles away from a town. To this day, I have no clue what happened, but I commonly refer to the singing as the angels because of how angelic it sounded. I think about it all the time, but it hasn't happened to me again since. I'm just glad I have someone to corroborate the story with, or else people would think I'm insane. 1991 NZ. At 15 years old I had just got off a 2-week grounding. My mom reluctantly let me go out on a school night to watch a movie at a friend's house. The movie was due to finish at 9 p.m. and I was expected home for 9:30 p.m. The walk home is through suburbia and usually would take no more than 10 minutes. My mom made it quite clear that if I wasn't back by 9:30 p.m., I'd be grounded for another week. We watched the movie, I immediately got up, said goodbye to my friend's parents and left. Noting it was just after 9 p.m. I got about halfway home and a large German Shepherd-style dog appeared in front of me snarling, drooling and blocking my path. I went across the road, and there it was in front of me again, stationary but still growling. I zigzagged up and down the road and it would appear and then disappear from sight. I then decided to sprint home. It followed me for a while, not running or barking, just walking and growling. I was a fat kid so was completely out of breath when I got to my front door. I knocked, and could hear the TV on, and my mother let me in with a real mean look in her eye, chastising me for being late, and that was another week's grounding and how her and my dad had been going mad with worry. I exclaimed, late? It can't be more than 9:20 p.m. I left friend's house at just gone 9 p.m. Ring her parents, they'll tell you my mother scoffed and said she'd rang my friend's parents and they confirmed I'd left at about 9, so what in God's name had I been doing for the last 2 hours? It was 11 p.m. I told my mom the story of the dog and she must have been able to see in my eyes that it wasn't bullshit. We checked every clock in the house and my mom even rang the speaking clock. It was 11 p.m. We rang my friend's parents to tell them I was okay. Her parents even told my mom that I was anxious to leave at 9 p.m. as I didn't want to be grounded again. I still 30 years later can't explain what happened that night. I'd been followed by the hound from hell and in the process lost 2 hours of my life. This is something I've never been able to rationalize. For months after my dad died, we were getting landline calls where no one would answer on the other end. This was in 2002, so, while robocallers were a thing, it definitely wasn't as prevalent as it is today, but we did assume they were probably wrong numbers or something. We didn't have any phones that displayed caller ID at the time. Well, one time, after getting yet another call with only silence on the other end, I jokingly said, "Dad, if that's you, call my cell phone." I want to preface this by saying I rarely ever got calls on my cell phone, and never spam calls in those days. I was 18 with an unlisted number that only my family and a few friends had. Just a few minutes later, my phone rang with a number I'd never seen before. With what I'd just said fresh in my mind, I kind of freaked out and didn't answer. I was on my way out to go somewhere with my mom, so when we got in the car, I told her what happened. We made the decision to call the number back. It never rang, but there was activity at the other end, muffled static and the sound of numbers being dialed slowly. It was the weirdest thing. Both my mom and I said hello, but no one ever answered. Has anyone ever had something like that happen to them when dialing a number? I've never had it happen before or since. Haunted furniture. Not my story, but my mom's. Her friend called her and was slightly hysterical that her house was haunted. My mom is a scientist and was very skeptical but agreed to come check it out. The friend was adamant that either the house was haunted or she was going crazy, and in either case, she needed help. My mom arrives at the friend's house, and she begins showing my mom what she's seen. First, in the living room, there is a brass lamp that is shiny so you can see the reflection of the kitchen behind as you look at the lamp. She asks my mom to just watch the reflection in the lamp. My mother sees a shadowy man step out from behind the wall. She turns around, there's no one there. This phenomenon repeats itself several times. Next, they go into the friend's son's room. Turn off the lights, close the door, but leave the hallway light on. As she's looking at the strip of light under the door, very clearly she sees the shadow of 2 feet step in front of the door. Open the door, no one there. Again, this phenomenon repeats itself several times. Lastly, they go lay in the friend's bed. She fluffs up the comforter and it falls on top of their legs. Very clearly you could see the indentation of someone sitting on top of the comforter. Fluff up the comforter again, and it happens again. All of these events would repeat themselves whenever she looked at them. My mom insists that she really tried to investigate all of these events but could find no other explanation. The friend went to a medium/psychic type soon after, who told her it was her furniture that was haunted, not the house. The furniture was secondhand, bought at a garage sale. So she got rid of the furniture and the paranormal stuff stopped. I used to work at a restaurant that had a garage door. Basically, it's a wall of windows that can be lifted up like a garage door to create a faux patio. It was a pretty solid thing, and it rattles fiercely when you open or close it. It looked out onto the street, which was usually quite busy. That night, I was finishing up closing duties, maybe 11 o'clock or so. Dishwasher and cooks are long gone. It's dark outside, so all I can see across the street are the lights from the opposing building. I turn on one of the main lights and step out, ready to tell whoever it is that we're closed. But, once again, the rattling stops and nobody is there. All I see are the lights across the street and my own annoyed expression reflected back at me. No trucks or cars. No people or wind. I return to the back room to grab my stuff, turn off the light again, and get ready to get the hell out of there. And, you guessed it, the rattling starts again. This time, I say out loud, I'm not doing this tonight. I'm tired. Just let me lock up and leave. It stops. I walk out of the back room, set the alarm, and open the back door that leads out into a dark parking lot at the back of the building. When I turn back to lock the door, I see a figure standing at the garage door. Needless to say, I got out of there as fast as I could. I know it was likely someone having a smoke. I know the rattling was probably just the wind, though I'd never heard it make that noise before, and never heard it again. And I know that the rattling stopping and starting like that was probably just an eerie coincidence. But sometimes I remember that the restaurant backed onto the city hall where an old jail sits just underground. Sometimes I remember how old that district is, and exactly what might have lived in these buildings before we moved in. And I'm glad I quit that job when I did. I was staying with a group of friends rock climbing in Spain. Really creepy Airbnb, lots of strange things happened while we were staying there. The creepiest was one morning we were getting ready for the day, packing food and generally getting our shit together, and I went upstairs to grab something. As I was heading back downstairs, I walked past my friend's boyfriend on the landing and saw him turn and go into his and my friend's room. I think I asked him something but he didn't reply. I thought rude and headed downstairs. Walked into the kitchen and he was there sorting food out with my friend. Everyone swore he'd been downstairs the whole time, plus there was only one staircase and it would have been impossible for him to overtake me and get to the kitchen before me without me noticing. I went back upstairs and checked their room and there was no one up there but me. I've never experienced anything creepy or inexplicable before we stayed in that Airbnb, and I'd say I'm skeptical about supernatural/paranormal stuff, but multiple things happened on that trip that spooked me. About 10 years ago, I'd have been 24, I was still living with my parents. My bedroom was in the basement. One night, around 3 a.m. I was woken up to the sounds of a young child crying. It sounded like it was coming from just outside my window. I couldn't just look out the window because it was covered in ivy, so I quickly hopped out of bed to go help the kid. As I got closer to my bedroom door, I could hear the crying was actually on the other side of the door. I opened the door. No one is there and the crying stopped. Spooked, I immediately jumped back in bed and the crying started again. Later that day at dinner, my family was sitting around the table and I brought up my experience I had. One of my sisters told a story about how when she was a kid she'd always leave her room at night to go sleep with my parents because she'd see a little girl walking out of her closet. As she left her room and got to my parents' door waiting to be let in because the door was locked, she'd see the little girl walking up the stairs that were right there. After her telling this story, my youngest sister looked scared and asked, "The little girl, is she wearing a pink nightgown with shoulder-length brunette hair?" Now my other sister was scared because that is exactly who she saw. My youngest sister told how she had similar experiences with that little girl coming out of the closet at night or walking up the stairs at night. I'm convinced that something happened either in that house before we moved in or on that land that my parents' house was built on. This one gave me chills. I saw a floating disembodied head when I was about 13. I had been asleep for about an hour when I awoke suddenly. Opening my eyes, I saw it, a very pale, white face, floating about 4 feet off the ground and directly in front of my face. It almost looked like a drama mask, with a curved face, but no head behind it. I don't remember it even having eyeballs, only the darkness of the room showing through where the eyes would be. As I began to attempt to process what I was seeing, it growled at me, "Grr." I jumped out of bed. I swear I didn't even use my hands or legs. I didn't need them. I just bounced out of bed. And I ran down the hallway, diving into the living room, into the line of sight of my parents, who were still watching TV in the family room. My parents seemed irritated, asking if I was on drugs. I wasn't. I think I mostly just startled them, and that's why they didn't respond very affectionately. I kept it to myself for the next few days, ready to discount it as my brain playing tricks on me, in the state between sleeping and wakefulness. The next week, I was over my uncle's house, on the street behind mine. His neighbor was hanging out, and they were chatting, while I used the bathroom. As I'm walking back down the hall, towards the living room, I overhear his neighbor finishing a story about something creepy he saw in his house recently. Finally having an opportunity to share my experience, I ask him what he saw. You can guess his response, a white floating head, in his bedroom, the same night I saw it. Scariest was probably when I was around 11 to 12. Went to a friend's house to hang out and found her sitting outside her house, freaking out. Saying a mirror kept trying to kill her. Once she calms down a little bit, she took me up to her room and said, "Watch this." She had this big square mirror on the top of her dresser, leaning back against the wall. She bends over like she is going to open the bottom drawer and get something out of it, and I watch this square mirror stand up on its own until it's not leaning on the wall but standing upright on its edge, and then it rolls as best a square can. All see a thunk, until it has rolled off the dresser and fallen to the ground, missing my friend's head by maybe half an inch. Mirror didn't break when it hit the ground. She gave me this, "You saw it, right? Look," put the mirror back up on the dresser, and we both left. I believe she had her mom move the mirror out of her room after that, and as far as I know nothing creepy like that happened again after that day, but it was unsettling to see. On a lighter note, my family had what we believe was the ghost of a little girl living with us for several years in a house we rented in TN. Never creepy, outside of just normal ghost girl unsettling. We would catch glimpses of her out of the corner of our eye. My wife and I would feel her climb up into bed with us to snuggle at night like little kids are wont to do. One of us would be up late at night and see the kid's computer chair swivel to face the computer and the computer boot up and start loading the kids' play or educational sites. One of the neatest experiences was when we got our first cat. She was a neighborhood stray and we took her in. The entire family was in the living room at the front of the house, just being chill and letting her explore her new environment. She meanders down the hall to the back of the house and we all hear, clear as day, a delighted little girl giggle and kitty. From down the hall. We moved away from that house about 7 years ago now. I still think about it and hope whoever is living there is nice to that little girl. She mostly just felt lonely. Not scary, but the single most inexplicable experience I've ever had. It's the summer of 1982, and I'm a teenager in central Alabama mowing lawns to pay my dad back the $500 he loaned me to buy a 1973 Datsun B210 that burned more oil than gas. I get a call from a woman who lives a couple of miles away. I kind of vaguely know her through her kids. Her son is a year or so older than I and we swim on the same swim team. Her daughter is a year younger than I and is going out with a guy I go to school with. So I know her to see her. Anyway, she saw my flyer. She needs her yard done right now today. People are visiting later, her husband and son are off on some church volunteer thing until the late afternoon, her daughter is at cheerleader camp, she's too busy cleaning and cooking to do the yard, etc., etc. So I pack up the mower and the edger and my work gloves, fill a thermos with ice water, southern summer sun is no joke, and head out. Their house is a typical suburban affair, but set back on a corner lot with a distressingly large yard. I mow it, edge the perimeter, and realize I've forgotten to bring the clippers. So I knock on the door to tell her that I'm going to run to my house to grab a tool to do the hedges and the monkey grass lining the walkways and I'll be right back. She tells me I can borrow their hedge clippers, they're in the garage. Would I like a glass of iced tea? I sure would, it's hot as blazes out here. She tells me to walk around to the garage so I don't track grass across her freshly vacuumed carpet. In the garage, I find the hedge clippers. Right next to them is an old book. I mean one of those fat musty gilt-edged leather-bound tomes you'd expect to find in an antiquarian shop. Not in a suburban garage next to the hedge clippers and weed killer. She notices me looking. Oh, that's Horatio's book. He likes to move it around. He scribbles in the front of it, too. He's the family poltergeist. She says family poltergeist like it's as normal as family dog or family car. What? I'm looking at the book. It's called People from the Other World by Henry Steele Alcutt, and it was published in 1875. The frontispiece is of a group of stuffed formally dressed people sitting before a curtain holding hands around a table. The image has been defaced with childish scribbles, like a bored kid with a pencil got a hold of it unsupervised. Horatio and William Eddy were my great-great-uncles. They were psychics. Spiritualists. They communed with the spirit world. This book is about them. Horatio's ghost has haunted the women in my family since his death in 1922. But don't worry. He's harmless. Note, this is the summer of 1982. The movie Poltergeist came out that June, and was probably still in theaters. I'd seen it. So, why is the book in the garage? It's usually on the coffee table in the living room. But Horatio. The poltergeist moves it around. She smiled at me like, yes, I just said that. Now here's the important part. I set that book right back on the shelf in the garage. Right where I found it. I know I did that. And she didn't pick it up. Her hands were empty as we walked out of the garage into the yard, where she changed the subject and pointed out some branches she wanted pruned and asked if I had a rake for the monkey grass clippings. We kept talking as I trimmed and raked up the last of the monkey grass. Small talk. Swim team, school, her son going to college soon. She sat on the front stoop smoking a cigarette while I finished up. At no time was she out of my sight. And there was no one else, I'd been told, in that house. Then she told me to wait for a moment and she's get some cash to pay me. She went in the front door and I followed her up the steps, stopping at the doorway to not mess up the carpet. And there it was, sitting on the coffee table in the living room. The same book. People from the Other World. Open to the frontispiece, which bore the same scribbles. I put that book down in the garage. She never left my sight while we were in the yard. The house was empty. Now here the book was, sitting in the living room. Moved by the poltergeist. I don't have an explanation. Maybe someone was hiding in the house expressly for the purpose of spooking the lawn boy with a poltergeist trick. But why? I mean, who does that? That's a strangely labor-intensive way to get your jollies. At swim practice, I asked her son about the family poltergeist. He looked uncomfortable and just said, "Yeah, my mom is weird." And that's my story. I have, of course, subsequently done some searching on the internet. The book exists and can be read online. The Eddy brothers were frauds, and pretty bad at it, too, by most other contemporary accounts besides all cuts. But I still don't know how that book got from the garage to the living room. I had a friend when I was around 8 that I would always hang out with. She drove me up the wall because if we were in different rooms and I called out to her, out that her parents and siblings were the same, and she said they roll like that too. Okay, fine. Well, one day I was over there and her dad was at work and her stay-at-home mom went to take one of her brothers to hockey practice and the younger one to the doctor's office or something. She left us home because she didn't feel like carting around a bunch of kids and she knew we wouldn't tear the house apart like the boys would. An hour after she left, my friend and I were upstairs together doing craft shit when I heard someone downstairs call her name. It happened twice and she didn't notice. I told her what I heard and we listened. After a while we heard the voice faintly call to her. It sounded like it was coming from the garage. I was like, "Oh, your mom is back. Ask her what she wants." My friend just quietly got up and walked all the way downstairs instead of yelling back. I followed her but was pissed. Like, why are we walking all this way when simply yelling back would get us all the answers we need? We go in the garage and there's no one there. We check the entire first floor and nothing. Doors and windows were all closed and locked still. I'm a bit weirded out and my friend nonchalantly grabs some ice cream from the fridge and we go and sit outside on the doorstep to eat it. I ask her WTF was that about and she's like, "Yeah, so you asked me why we don't answer anyone calling from other rooms or outside and this is why." She explained that in her culture they believe that demons use the voices of your loved ones to try to lure you to hell or something. She said you're safe if you don't answer them, which is why her family would always come into the room to verify the person calling them was actually a person. Now I'm freaked out and don't want to go back inside at all until her mom would return. My friend was pretty unaffected by it all and said she's used to it. In my panic, I asked if the demons ever shape-shifted so that even if you see your loved one who called you, it really wasn't them. She got quiet and thought about that. Then got scared and started crying. She said she never thought of that before. We both ran to our other friend's house down the road and stayed there. When I was a kid, my mom took my sister and I on vacation. I only remember this happening one night while we were there, but the hotel we stayed at was pretty much all flats with one bedroom. I slept in the bed with my mom and my sister was on the pull-out sofa. I can't remember if I was trying to go to sleep or woke up in the night to this, but I just know everyone else was asleep. It was really dark with just a little light from the street outside coming in on the sides of the curtains. On each side of the bed stood a black silhouette and it felt like they were all staring right at me, acknowledging their presence. I didn't feel threatened or afraid of them at all and turned on the bedside light and not surprisingly nobody was there. I turned the light back off and there they were still in the same positions. I just looked at them for a while but must have eventually fell asleep. The only other detail of that experience I remember is waking up the next day and mentioning it at breakfast and my sister saying she felt like she was being watched the whole night. I have no explanation for it, but it's a memory that has stuck with me over many years now. My grandparents had a porcelain doll in the basement, and I would wander down there as a child to play with my building blocks. I noticed it but paid no mind. It was just a doll, right? Nope. One time the eye rolled back, and I shat myself in fear, and ran back up, didn't think to tell anyone cause who would believe me. Years went by, and the doll never was moved from the chair. It just sat, and sat. Until the day my grandfather sold the house. I was about 13. My parents and I helped with cleaning out the house. I went downstairs, to double check that everything had been moved out. And the chair was there, covered on dust, cobwebs, etc., but no doll. I asked if anyone had moved it, and they replied that they hadn't. I went to the adjoining room, and sitting on the workbench, was the damn doll. Except this time, it wasn't normal. It was facing the back wall, and as I moved towards it, the fucking head twitched, like a person had turned it. I went around, and picked it up, ready to hurl it against the wall. Mind you, I was 13. I was scared shitless. Anyway, I picked it up, and it felt warm. Like it was an actual body. I dropped it, ran, and told my mother that there was a haunted doll downstairs. And what did she do? Throw it away? Nope. It's sitting in her goddamn living room. And at 24, I refuse to set foot in that room to this day. Oh, I have one for you. Okay, first off, let me say that I am the hardest of skeptic and I cannot explain this one bit. Here we go. It's the fall of 1999, my friend and I were young and out on a trip. We were talking and joking and just generally having a great time all day long. It was approaching 2 a.m. at this point and we were driving on what was at the time a barren road in the middle of nowhere. When I say remote, I mean remote. It is a highway that stretches between Kanab and Hurricane in Utah. We were a little more than halfway, and if you know the area you know that there was nothing there. Nothing for at least 40 miles in either direction, and even then the most you would find is a shack. It was at this point when my friend noticed someone on the side of the road walking. We thought this was incredibly weird and pulled over to help. I mean, it's late and there is nothing around, so it's the least we could do. My buddy rolled down the window as we slowed to a stop, and I called out to the lone walker. "Hey man, you stuck out here?" No response, but they stopped walking. As we pulled up right next to them, so close I could have hugged them out my window, I said, "Do you need help?" The person looked at me. There was nothing. Blankness. No features. No face. Just black abyss with eyes like stars. My friend yelped and slammed on the gas. A dread like I have never felt filled the car as we spun out, spraying gravel and burning tires. As we lurched forward, the figure never moved. Even as we squealed away spraying them with gravel and dirt, they never flinched. Just watched on with the eyes like stars. I will never forget that night. Like I said, I am a skeptic. I have tried to explain this a million times. It's just that nothing makes sense. 40 miles in either direction is barren desert. Like for real desert. No cars around or pulled to the side the whole drive. Why did they not have a face? What was with those creepy eyes? This happened 24 years ago. I was 16 and it was the middle of the night. It was summertime and hot, so I would sleep with my window cracked open about 6 inches. Right outside my bedroom window was a chain-link fence that separated the backyard from a separate backyard, both our property. There were planks of wood, 2x4s, an extra window, junk, all leaning up against both sides of that fence. Our house was a work in progress, and we always had extra pieces of wood around. Anyway, I'm sleeping and it's probably 2 a.m. and I just opened my eyes. I don't know why I woke up, but I just opened my eyes like, on command. I see that I am literally 4 inches away from the ceiling. I blinked several times thinking my eyes were just out of focus. No, I am that close to the ceiling. As soon as I make that realization, I feel myself get sucked back into bed. Totally startled and confused, I lied there, paralyzed in fear. Then I look to the corner of my room, towards the ceiling, and I see a swirling gray cloud. In an instant, I sense this gray cloud knows I am aware of its presence. It rushes over my bed, then shoots out the window. At that moment, the boards and wood leaning up against the fence outside my room explode. Not explode, but by some force, are thrown from both sides of the fence. The next morning, wood was all over both yards. I didn't know how to explain what has happened, so I helped pick up the wood and carried on. A strange thing is that I knew that it needed an open window to escape. And I knew it as soon as it flew out the window. I don't know how I knew that, but it was important that the window was open. Many years later I realized that I may have been having some kind of out-of-body experience, but that was the most real, unreal thing that has ever happened to me. A kaleidoscope. Back in 2019, December, I wasn't sleeping very well. Every time I would try to sleep I had this weird fear that kept me up. This has never happened. I never have issues sleeping. I got to bed at 9 p.m. and wake up at 5 a.m. Next to my bed I had a pretty big mirror, so one of the nights I was trying to sleep, it must have been 2 a.m. or something, and I opened my eyes and in the mirror I see a shadow behind me. I blinked and it disappeared. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder and I heard now, when I turned around this, well listen what I saw. I don't know. I don't get it. The only way I can try to describe it is that it was like a fucking kaleidoscope with greenish colors floating. Like reality was fucked and mutating or something in front of me. I stared at it in shock and the only thing my brain processed the only thing I even did was try to tackle it, which I did. I jumped and attempted to tackle it, and though I just ended up crashing on the floor like an insane woman, it was still there, so I screamed and ran out of my house. I woke up a bunch of neighbors who went to my house and saw nothing. This kept happening every night for 2 weeks. I was completely exhausted and going crazy and I moved out of there. Never had that issue again. Sorry for bad English, I won't use the "it's my second language" BS, I get so frustrated every time I think about this because I can't explain what I saw. I still don't understand it, but I swear it was real. TW, Suicide. I have always had ghost encounters and weird things happen, but after my brother-in-law killed himself, I started having more stuff happening. I chalked it up to me being severely depressed and dissociating from grief. Weird things like my swinging door with a door stopper kept slamming in my face as I walked up to it. A glass plate from my great-grandfather was propped on the window and would fall on the floor without breaking any time I walked through the room. I had a song for him, I Drive Your Truck, that the electric would start blinking when it played on the radio. I felt hands on my shoulder as I slumped through the house. 7 months later, I went into my parents' office to work. I would use their office to work remotely as a web designer when I was in town. Their employee came into my office at the end of the day and closed the door quietly. She was staring at me quietly and said, "I have something I need to talk to you about." I thought it was that she crashed the website or something. "I'm shaking writing this," she said. "As soon as you walked in the office today, I've seen a man following you around. I see spirits, and he figured out I could see him. He hasn't left me alone all day, telling me I need to talk to you. He won't let me leave the office until I tell you what he has to say." At this point, I'm so shocked I was shaking. She said he has his head hanging down and he has a gun in his hand. He says he's so sorry and to not worry about him because he's at peace. He says he is the one slamming your doors and knocking a plate off the window. He's been trying to reach you, but you won't listen. He wants you to know that he sits with your kids at night when they can't sleep, and he's so sorry that he can't be their uncle anymore. He keeps saying a name that starts with D and putting his arm way up. Didn't know what that meant at the time, but later figured it was the name of his twin brother that was almost a foot taller than him. Name starting with a D. Then she said he wants you to tell everyone that he's okay and he's sorry to put them through this. Not going to lie, this kind of put me in a tailspin for a few months where I would talk to him out loud hoping nobody heard me, knowing he was there listening. A week after this happened, I was cleaning up Christmas stuff and packing up boxes. Depression is a bitch and makes you not want to clean up for months, lol. I had all the boxes packed and said to myself, well, I guess that's it. Right when I said that, there was a crash in the kitchen. Go in, see a Christmas picture I hang up for the season crashed and broken on the floor after it fell off the wall. Said thanks, bro. And packed it up even though it was broken. 5 years later, if I'm driving in my car and that song comes on the radio, the electric system in the car still goes haywire and I can feel him sitting in the passenger seat while I drive. I bought a 100-year-old house in 2010. We had little things happen like hearing someone talking or feeling like a dog rubbing against the side of the bed, but nothing major. Then one night I slept on the living room floor. I broke my back. I started panicking, counted to 3, threw back the comforter and ran. I screamed, I was so scared. My husband and I searched the house and there was no one there. The doors were all locked too. I've never slept in the living room alone again. My wife and I were sitting on the couch watching TV with our dog on the floor. The screen went black for a commercial and we both saw in the reflection someone walking behind us. Our dog started barking and I jumped up, then turned around. No one there. I started walking down the hallway. That was the direction they went. My feet were suddenly wet and I looked down. There were wet footprints in the carpet leading to our bedroom. I ran to our bedroom and then realized it wasn't wet footprints, the whole carpet was soaked. Opened the master bedroom door and I saw someone going into our bathroom. I ran around real quick but no one was in there. I heard water trickling and turned the light on. Our toilet connection was leaking from the valve, so I turned it off. Still no one in the room though, no way out. A few months later I was playing Battlefield in our bedroom and she came to me and pulled my headphones off to ask, "Why did you ignore me?" I said, "Sorry, I couldn't hear you with my headphones on." She replied, "No, a minute ago when you walked past me in the hallway I explained to her that I was in the middle of a match and had not left my seat for the past 30 minutes at least." She swore again and again that someone had walked past her while she was looking in the fridge. My mom came to stay with us for a week and she had always been a little weird and made absurd claims, but we didn't mention these to anyone at all. I came home from work and my mom told me that we didn't have to worry about the woman in the hallway anymore because she agreed to leave. We never told my mom anything about the hallway or the person we saw. It's not scary or anything paranormal, but rather very bizarre and strange. I was a kid when this happened, probably around when I was 11 years old on a summer. Me and my younger sister were just casually hanging out in the living room watching TV when she told me she had this magic. I vividly remember that's what she called it. She told me to get all of my notebooks, pile them up, put your hand on top of it and chant the words, "I wish I had $2 5 times." I asked her where she got that silly idea from and she said she got it from her classmate. I never bothered asking who because I thought it was just typical made up stuff by kids who got bored. So we tried to do it and I shit you not, 5 $2 bills appeared at the very last page of the very bottom notebook. Now I don't know what or how this very weird thing happened, and at the time I didn't think it was because I was happy and excited that real money just showed up out of nowhere. We spent it obviously, and we did it again and again. That's when our mom started noticing that we would have new stuff she knew she didn't get for us. Eventually we were caught and we tried explaining it to her, but she wouldn't believe us, and so we just falsely admitted that we stole the money. Years later I'd try and do it, but it wouldn't work anymore, and as I grew older, 20 now, I still think of it from time to time and I get goosebumps. Questions like where it came from, maybe someone out there lost their money and popped up from our notebook. This has never happened again, and I never will try it again now that I realize how strange it is. I have always had paranormal experiences, but the two scariest were from when I lived in my mom's childhood home. The first one was when you was supposed to be napping, and me being me, I gathered all of mine and my brother's stuffed animals to make me feel safer. As I'm laying there and roll over to my window, and outside of my second-story window was a teenage girl who was wearing the t-shirt of the local high school. At the time scary AF, but around 5 years later I brought it up to my mom and she said it freaked her out more because a girl who matched the description of the one in my window had died in a car accident around that time. My second story was in the same house but a bit later. The house had 2 staircases in either side of the house, and since I couldn't step over the baby gate to the kitchen I had to go up and around. One time I'm doing this, and as I go down the front stairs someone grabs my arm. Keep in mind everyone including my cats are either downstairs or within view of me. When I turn around no one was there. When you put these alongside the fact that the entire time I lived there I saw shadow figures and people and heard voices regular night. Pretty sure that house was haunted as Had a moment in the dark, in a barn. It was converted into a casual hangout, suitable for humans but not secure. We lived on a 25-acre farm. Figured we'd be okay. The doors were always open and the windows had no glass, so you could hear everything up to 20 feet away pretty well. One night we were watching movies late and heard loud footsteps. They sounded almost ridiculous, like the person making them was impossibly huge and heavy. Turned off the TV to be sure it was happening off screen, and they stopped for a second before continuing around the side of the barn. I was small at the time, so my sister grabbed me and scooted toward the corner while my parents put themselves between us and the doors, waiting for the person to come into view. When the footsteps reached the doors, which were wide open, tons of moonlight pouring through them, there wasn't anything there. My stepdad grabbed something heavy and went to check it out and came back pretty much immediately, face as white as a sheet. There was no one there, but there were giant boot prints right outside. We all huddled together and traced them around the side of the barn up to the spot we'd heard them start, and there was no trail. They just started and stopped without any sign. Still have no fucking clue what happened. Just that the mystery feet would appear every single full moon like clockwork. Fall, 1988. My parents built a brand new house in a brand new subdivision on the edge of suburbia, bordered farmland. One evening I was sitting in my room doing homework. My sister was in her room next to mine, my folks were downstairs. All quiet, about 5 p.m. or so, still bright out. No windows open. My 13-year-old sister, 2 years older than me, comes flying into my room all freaked out and said something strange just happened in her room. I followed her back, but she stayed in the hall initially. She pointed at her dresser, a solid wooden thing about 4 feet high, completely level on thick carpet. No chance this dresser was moving around. There were some odds and ends on top of the dresser, including a can of Aqua Net aerosol hairspray. It was the 80s. She said it moved across her dresser by itself. I picked it up and placed about 12 inches to the left, and stepped back. It began to tremble a bit in place and slid in a quick, smooth motion to where it was when I picked it up. We both freaked out, and I picked it up and repeated the action a few more times, maybe 4 more. It moved the same way each time, and then it stopped and would not repeat. We ran downstairs and told our parents. They would not listen and could not have cared less. So I was like 10 and my gran had died maybe 5 weeks ago. I was in my room moping when my mom and dad popped in to say they had to run to the store and my grandpa was gonna look after me for a while. He went outside to work on his garden and I was in my room playing with Legos. I was sitting down when suddenly the door to my room opened. No one was around and it was a still summer, so no draft. Then down the hall in my gran's room, the door opened and slammed really fast. I yelled to my grandpa to see if he had went to the room, but he yelled from outside that he had stayed. Then the other door on the other side of the house slammed open and someone yelled. My grandpa rushed and asked if I yelled right as I asked if he yelled. We both were kind of shook up, and now every once in a while in the house one of the doors will open for no reason then slam shut. This happened when I was about 9 years old, in 19 now, but I remember that night very clearly. We had just immigrated from Poland to Norway, and my family who have lived here for a while helped us rent out a house until we could find a permanent place to move in at. The house was super old and belonged to the parents of the landowner. There was nothing special about the house, except the top floor. Whenever I would go up I would get chills, every single time. I didn't think much of it at first, but after some weeks of living there I would hate the place and everything about would feel weird and creepy. I have some episodes of weird stuff going on, like random noises in the attic and stuff, but there is one story that really stands out. Me and my mom used to stay up late in the weekends and have a sleepover in the living room, just family bonding stuff, and we would watch a movie every weekend. One night we were both asleep and I suddenly wake up hearing footsteps, clear as day, just outside the living room. I then look up and watch the hallway that was leading the living room to the kitchen. Suddenly I see a tall pale man with a face. His face was very sad and he just kept staring at me. Then he turns around and walks out, and I could still hear his footsteps very clearly. It freaked me out so much that I just froze up, woke my mom up and asked if she heard anything. She wouldn't wake up, and as freaked up and as young as I just tried going to sleep. Since then I hated every minute of that house. Nothing felt right about it. Some months go by and we finally move out. I haven't told my parents about any of my experiences from the house, especially the tall man, and I told my parents everything when we moved to the new house and didn't have to go back. Then they told me that they experienced similar things. My mom would get chills whenever she was in their bedroom and felt like somebody was watching her. My dad heard cracking noises in the stairs at night pretty often, and the noises in the attic happened pretty often too. First then did I learn that the landowner's father hung himself in either the attic or the bedroom, can't quite remember. Since then I have never doubted the thought of ghosts existing, cause I'm pretty sure it's a ghost that I saw. After we moved out, new people moved in, and they too experienced awful stuff. One family even called in a priest and he too felt a weird presence.